Insight 20. It is beneficial to recognize the usage of subtle manipulations by others, and to practice making continuous, conscious efforts to be free from these influences. Again, it is beneficial to recognize the usage of subtle manipulations by others, and to practice making continuous, conscious efforts to be free from these influences. Explanation. Many people are not adequately knowledgeable on how the mind works. Some know about the mind, and they might use it to attract and manipulate others. Of course, many use the knowledge for good purposes, such as gaining the student's attention in school to convey your point, diverting your infant's attention to stop crying, plainly advertising company products, and countless other situations. Many people are aware of its use in advertising, in some advertising, and in much more subtle ways in organizations, clubs, newspapers, magazines, books, and movies, etc., to promote a certain kind of lifestyle that sells their product or promotes the idea that they want to get across, be it good or for good or for ill, such as peace, prejudice, equanimity, caring, pride, and superiority, etc. All these ideas anybody could get across using all sorts of methods, within all sorts of media. Within such movies and advertising that that promote the ill, the advantages of that lifestyle are pointed out greatly, and the disadvantages are de-emphasized. So in the movies, if you see some kind of lifestyle which is ill, negative, and they try to promote that, they emphasize the positive aspects of it and de-emphasize the negatives. So you as a whole experience it as a positive. And so you want to be aware of that. You want to get an accurate understanding of, hey, it has positive and negatives, not just positives and a little bit of negatives. No. When the disadvantages are shown, they are shown with humor, for the reason that while the disadvantage is clear, you experience happiness and acceptance of the disadvantage because of the humor introduced along with it. So again, when the disadvantages are shown, they are shown with humor, for the reason that while the disadvantage is clear, you experience happiness and acceptance of the disadvantage because of the humor introduced along with it. Much of the techniques involved have to do with positioning, color, size, movement, action, place, identity, association, etc. An example of this is when a person has drunk too much alcohol the night before. Humor is presented along with the ill feeling felt in the morning after. This makes it seem more acceptable instead of perceiving the ill effects as something completely undesirable. Insight number 21. Some people mistakenly believe that the Kama Sutra is about sexual gratification. Upon seeing the various verses related to sex, they relatively quickly and mistakenly ascertain that the purpose of the verses is to have sex with married women in a number of other circumstances. However, as is stated in the Kama Sutra itself, those matters were stated in order to make people aware of what sexual practices were in use at that time period. The book mentions the methods of trickery used to seduce married women in order to put a stop to it. For how can a husband put a stop to a seducer if he does not know what methods the seducer uses? Living one's life for passion is discouraged, while a proper marriage and the union of sex and love encouraged. People's minds are very affected by controversial matters, generally speaking. They lose their sense of objectivity, their ability to think clearly. They lose that. Basically, when something is controversial, it affects their mind, and they go into this mode of trying to reject or thoroughly accept that thing that is supposedly being mentioned. But while they're doing this, they may have lost their objectivity and totally misread what was actually presented. For example, my sign says sex fixation solved, right? Sex fixation solved. Big sex fixation solved. Now, I had a woman once stop and say, very quickly, she looked at it and immediately said, I take offense to that sign, or I'm offended by that sign or something. That, to me was puzzling why she said that, but I understood. More than likely, she didn't really read the sign or understand it. She was just saw the word sex and immediately the thoughts of women being ill-treated or mistreated comes to her mind, and she starts saying she's offended. She hasn't read the sign. Anyway, so I switched the sign immediately around. There's no reason to engage in conversation with such a person who is just making snap judgments. You can't have a proper discussion or talk or get your ideas across. They're too offended to think clearly. They think that you're on the opposite side in a fighting mode against them already. So it's ridiculous. Anyway, so I switched my sign around. My sign on the other side, what did it have? Oh yeah, I had the word sex changed to SE and an underline. So the offending thing, the word which is offending, which is sex, is SE underline. So the thing that was causing her an offense was taken out, SE and underline. She was silent after that. So that's what's happening when people are reading the Kama Sutra. They essentially start reading, and what they get is like, oh my God, this is saying, carry on sex with this and that and this way and that way, and it's talking about sex with married women and how to seduce married women and so many things like this. And so they relatively quickly and mistakenly gather that this book is just about, sex, how to have sex in various ways and in immoral ways. This is what they think, mistakenly. So they've basically given up their thinking objectively, and this is the judgment that they get into, judgments. So, knowing your mind, knowing how your mind is powerfully affected by something that is controversial, tilting your objectivity into judgment, from objectivity and clarity into judgment. When you are reading something controversial, you have to fight hard to remain objective. Don't rush to judgments and say, this is what it's saying. Take your time, think it through, think it a lot through, think think it through a lot. You have to consider many various factors. Example: the book that we're mentioning has been written many years ago. Many. I don't know how long, but the Kama Sutra, right? How long ago was it written? It was written in a foreign language, so it's been translated into English or the language that you're reading. You have to take that into account and say, hey, maybe I'm misreading because maybe the translation was wrong. Maybe something is not said correctly, or the translation, maybe the mood of it was translated incorrectly. Maybe also, if it's a language that's let's say 1,000 years old or 500 years old or whatever, even 300, 200 years old or 100 years old, even though the language is translated, the old language's expressions are different than the new one. Even the words, the same exact words could mean opposite of what they mean now. There are examples of cases, even in English, where a word 100 years ago, 50 years ago, meant exactly the opposite of what it means now. So there's a lot of potential for misunderstanding the material when it's a foreign language, when it's an old language. When we're talking about controversial material, when we're talking about a foreign culture, you have to try to figure out, now not only do I have to figure out the foreign language translated, but also having to mind that this is a foreign culture and you don't know how they deal with things, how their manner of speaking is, how they're... So yeah, all these things. This is too many to mention, but everything is in there. So many things. Consider the amount of expressions available in English, even sarcastic remarks, so many things. And then you realize how difficult it is to really understand a foreign translated work, especially when it's written a long time ago. The truth is, God and the author himself or herself is the only person who knows the true intention of the author. Everybody else should try to maintain their objectivity while trying to understand the intention of the author. Very good. Insight number 22. The mind, through focus, can find objects, ideas, and other phenomena that are similar to be quite intriguing. The mind, through focus, can find various things that are vaguely related or totally unrelated intriguing. So the key factor is focus. The mind, through its focus, can find objects, ideas, people, whatever, that are similar to be quite intriguing. So it's comparing. The mind is comparing two different objects, two different people, objects and people, ideas and people, ideas and objects, different things that are similar in some way to be intriguing. It could be fascinated by it. It goes, oh. For example, a woman is walking by with blonde hair with a dog that is similar to her hair color. They go, people note that. They notice that. They go, oh. They say, wow, she's just like her dog, or the dog is just like her. Another one is, let's take the dog example again. Often you might see people who their dogs look like themselves, facially, or hair-wise, and so people make a note of that. They go, oh, or behavior-wise, the dog is similar to the person. Because it's similar, they make a connection and go, oh, interesting. So interesting that they make a note of it. You have, when you go to stores, shops of all sorts, you have items for sale that are not related to what the purpose of the object is for. Meaning, let's say you have a mirror, and the mirror says a brand name of some soda, like a fizzy drink. It's not related to the mirror, but it intrigues your mind. The intrigue comes from the similarity that, oh, this drink is being mentioned here, and so it intrigues you. Go, oh. Objects that are dissimilar are made to seem similar by this connection, like slippers that they have in the shape of dogs, hats in the shape of dogs and cats, lions and tigers and bears, So this is a combination between dissimilar objects made similar, or making a connection because of designing it so that it reminds of one of another item, another phenomenal thing, another phenomenon. So the mind, through focus, can find various things that are vaguely related or totally unrelated intriguing. So you might say, an example of one that is something that is totally unrelated. A tutu, a pink tutu, and an elephant are totally unrelated. So that when you see it on, when you see in one of these circuses an elephant wearing a pink tutu, it intrigues the mind because they're totally unrelated, but yet one can say vaguely related because that's an animal and can wear a tutu, and so it intrigues the mind. Plus, because of its opposite nature, but nonetheless, there is a similarity and an unrelatedness mixture in there. So you see, the mind is making connections. That's what's happening between. It's making connections. It's noticing the connections of similar things and dissimilarities. It's making connections of similarities and dissimilar things, saying this item is similar to this in such a fashion, and it's dissimilar in such a fashion. And through this, the mind is busy, engaged, can be mesmerized, is intrigued, making observations. It could be the most simplest thing, like the weight of the object. Similar weights, no matter what item it is, you go, oh, similar weights. Oh, see, finds intrigue and interest. It intrigues the mind. Further example of similar things, how the mind is intrigued by things that are similar. You have collectors of cars, vehicles, cars, whether it's matchbox small cars or model cars or actual cars. You have often collectors engaged in talking about their various parts of their cars, and or what year the car is made, and what that year car had as far as license plates, headlights, everything in the car. They'll talk about it, everything and anything, and how in the car based on the year, and also how this car is slightly different from the next year model of that same car. And it's a whole thing. The mind is intrigued by it. And then there might be even stories behind why this, why that, why they had this done and why they didn't have. And an intriguing example a friend of mine told me once was in, I believe it was in Mexico. They were trying to sell the Chevy Nova. So the car's make is the Chevy, and the name is called Chevy Nova. Now, they didn't make any sales in Mexico, and the company was wondering why. very low sales, or no sales, or low sales. They just didn't realize that in Spanish the word nova means doesn't go. Buy this car, Chevy doesn't go, as in it doesn't work. You know, so it's good. Okay, so we're on insight number 23. Remember, we were talking about focus. So, through focus, the mind can literally find the whole world in a grain of sand, in one grain, and be mesmerized by it indefinitely. Similarly, through lack of focus, the mind could, in the midst of an entire varied universe, be oblivious to that universe and all that it contains. So you pick a grain of sand, tiny little grain of sand, with a telescope, or not a telescope, what do they call it? A microscope. With a microscope, you can go quite close into that sand and look at it so closely that it seems to be the size of a planet, one grain of sand. With an electron microscope and other very similar microscopes, one can go quite deep into the sand and see it even bigger than one planet. Could be many planets or a galaxy. Or one can write volumes and volumes, never-ending amount of volumes on this one grain of sand. Scientific research about all kinds of stuff on the sand, on one grain of sand. One can be mesmerized by this one grain of sand and all that its various abilities and texture and all kinds of stuff, whatever is about the sand, indefinitely. Also, now this is done through focus. Also, through lack of focus, the mind could, in the midst of an entire varied universe, here you are, an entire varied universe. Through lack of focus, one can be oblivious to everything that it contains. There are people like that who are, because of various circumstances, have remained in their house or are stuck in a routine of doing certain things and only those things, and not really getting out and being aware of the universe that they're contained in the planet that they're contained in the country that they're contained in the city. So, like it could be the pressures of job or just how things are set up. Some people just have difficulty getting outside of their routine of going to work, go to sleep, eat, watch a movie, go to your favorite place, restaurant, or whatever. So yeah, so in this case, it would not be the lack of focus. It would just be the focus is on those particular things, the routine. So the mind is kept busy with those routines. An idea, a sports, clothing, or whatever can be, you can be disinterested by it. And so therefore it does not hold your focus. People hardly know how other people live in their country. They're in different countries, so there's a lot of people who are unaware of a whole bunch of stuff in this universe. There's a lot of stuff going on. Okay, we're on insight number 24. Attention, focus, and distraction are extremely powerful tools of the mind that are not to be underestimated. So we have attention, focus, and distraction. They're extremely powerful tools of the mind. They are not to be underestimated. I understand that you know about these things, meaning the word attention, focus, and distraction, but you need to really get to understand what they're about and how they're thoroughly, why are they so powerful? How do they work on the mind? All these things we'll be going into very nicely. Now, reminds me of a koan I wanted to mention. A lot of these koans, people don't know. I mean, you read one of them and you say, "Oh, I don't know, what does that mean?" Exactly. Until you are aware of a certain reality, a certain perspective, the koan simply does not make sense to you. When you know of a certain reality, certain truth, a certain perspective, then when you read this koan, then you go, ah, I see what is being said here. So until then, it seems like puzzling and even just doesn't make any sense. You know, what's going on? Nothing. I'm going to give you an example of one, and I'm going to give you the meaning, the possible meaning of the answer to you. Okay? So there's a koan that there's, I think, two boys or two men, it could be two boys, on top of a tower of some sorts, tower or some kind of tall building. Anyway, so as they're looking down, three men are walking. They see on the ground, three men are walking, and one man says to the other. This is on the tower. The two boys or two men in the tower, or on the high up. They start talking to each other. One says to the other, he says, one of those guys is enlightened. The other guy says, which one? And then one of the guy yells at the three men, "Hey!" Something like that. Two of the men look up. One of them doesn't. And so the boy says, the one that didn't look up, he's the one who's enlightened. Now, to a regular man who doesn't know about this information, they say, how is that? What is that saying? How can one tell if that was the wise man or the enlightened one? You know, what's going on here? What is being actually said here? It seems very puzzling. So my understanding of the explanation is this. No one told me this, by the way. It's just apparent to me because I know about this stuff. So I don't know all koans, but this one made sense to me. So a person who is enlightened has the ability to be not affected by duality, by contrasts. And making a sound is a contrasting element. Here's three people walking along. Suddenly there's this active voice, something active, something occurring. It's a contrast affecting the senses. Now, the one who is enlightened has the ability to immediately recognize there is a sound being made, and he makes a conscious decision to be affected by it or not. It's just a sound. Usually they try not to be affected by it, and so they just walk along disinterested, knowing full well, not allowing the sound to overwhelm the mind. Because if it did overwhelm the mind, it would grab the attention and the focus and cause a behavior, change. You just look now, yeah. Now, of course, if a person does make a sound, I might look, or other people might look, and usually it's done as a matter of safety, for cautious reasons. Help somebody else or help yourself, whatever it is. Oh, another interesting one is I had one guy actually ask me, said, would you run out of a burning building? I said, of course I would run out of a burning building. Then he says, well, then you're not enlightened because you're afraid. Oh my God. So I tried to explain to the gentleman that one need not be afraid to run out. It's simply a matter of, do you want your body to, this instrument to be working in a good condition or not? To be maintained or not maintained? To be destroyed or not destroyed? It's a simple matter of that. Not a matter of being afraid. Just being cautious. It's the step to take. It's the step to take. Anyway, so the activity of the mind. You go and you do something. You go someplace. You want to go to a park. You want to go to a movie. You want to go to a restaurant. Whatever. You want to go to a religious performance. Whatever. You want to go see your family members. Whatever it is. This action that you're going to do is dependent on the thoughts that your mind is thinking of. And the thoughts that you're thinking of is dependent on your attention or your focus. So you're doing an activity, you're gonna do an activity, or you did an activity, but whatever you did, all these things, or you went to someplace, this activity was it came from your thoughts that you had in your mind. Oh, I want to do this. I want to taste this ice cream. I want to go there. Thoughts allowed the action to occur. It stemmed from the thoughts, and the thoughts stemmed from your attention, what you paid attention to, and what your focus was on, attention or focus. So here we're going into how your attention or your focus is so very important in your life. We're showing how it's the stem, the very bottom root, very early roots of stemming in thought and then action of the thought. So it's quite involved in your lives. So it's very important for any individual who wants to take control of his or her life, not to underestimate these points of attention, focus, and distraction, but for them to be quite thoroughly aware of how important they are. Very good.